question. It's a good question because it's a challenging question, and I don't really know what the answer is, but I'm going to try and... I don't think there is a proper answer to this, but I'll try and give you an answer that is functional, and that you can actually take something away from and use, rather than trying to answer the question from a scientific or objective academic standpoint. Got a message from a man who shall remain nameless. Just reading it off my phone, so I don't have my laptop in front of me. I saw your video where you talked a little about narcissists going negative to receive negative supply. Was wondering if you could expand on that in a video. Not really. I'm not sure whether... If a narcissist is actually... If you're seeing somebody and you think they're a narcissist and they're behaving in a way that actually gathers negative supply, meaning that rather than be ignored, they deliberately act like buffoons, or start doing things that are actually obnoxious just to get attention, then strictly speaking, technically, you're probably looking at somebody who's more comorbid with borderline and maybe histrionic personality disorder. It's all in the cluster B. It's all in the cluster B. Like, people have said to me, why, if you don't like mainstream psychiatry and psychotherapy, do you follow the DSM? I might have not said this before in another video, so I'll say it here. The DSM's definition of cluster B personality types works for me. I don't have any major suggestions for improvement on it. The problem is, my problem with mainstream psychotherapy and psychiatry, in general, is that a lot of them don't actually know how to heal the human being that's sat in front of them. They know how to define the problem. It's like the old botanists. If you ever saw the film Russell Crowe, I think it's called Master and Commander, Journey to the Far Side of the World, there's the character of the Doctor played by Paul Bettany, who does a really good portrayal of, you know, the roots of science as we know it today and where its flavour and its style comes from. You know, these dudes in floppy hats on faraway islands doing amazingly intricate drawings of exotic birds and animals they'd never seen before and plants, and labelling them. The love of labelling. And the psychiatric community, I think, has done an excellent job of telling us what the problem is, of defining the mechanisms of the problem. They're doing a shoddy job of fixing it. I'm not going to get into why here, but basically what I suspect is that the fundamental principles on which psychology, psychotherapy, counselling and psychiatry are built stop the people working in that community from presenting solutions. They actually... everything stays locked in place. So that's why I use the DSM's definition. I have no problem with them. Histrionic, borderline, narcissism, and antisocial personality disorder that was formerly known as psychopathy. I don't think it's useful to define all of that as narcissism. I don't find it useful to define all of that as being psychopaths. I don't find the word psychopath a particularly scientific term to use anymore. It's not used. The reason it's not used is because it got hijacked culturally. In the way that narcissism is a term that's now being hijacked culturally to mean, you know, when it's misused and abused as a term, I hear people and read on forums, basically a narcissist is anybody who doesn't do what I like. And then you get like one person with a personality disorder accusing another person with a personality disorder in a disordered relationship, and they're both going, you're a narcissist, and you get this like double knockout effect. They both hit each other at the same time, and it's becoming less and less useful. Because it's mired in people's misunderstanding of it. So, when there is negative supply, that's what I would usually... If somebody's just behaving like a buffoon and possibly damaging their own image and their own status within a social group because they're so desperate for attention, my brain goes, that sounds more like a histrionic. The garnering of attention for attention's sake, where it could induce sympathy as the end game, my brain goes, that sounds like borderline supply. So I said in an earlier video that sometimes narcissists garner negative supply just to be seen. And you know, as my understanding increases, as I do more of my own research and I work with more people, my view of this changes. And I don't think it's useful to say narcissists garner narcissistic supply. I think our distinction should be as subtle as possible and as intricate and as precise and sophisticated as possible, because we're trying to, well, I say we, I meant the royal we are trying to help people. So when you're trying to deconstruct the bizarre effects that, you know, being with a narcissist or a borderline or a histrionic can have, it's not good enough to just go, oh, it's all just nasty. We're just going to call them nasty pasties. They're just nasty pasties from now on. Which actually, ironically enough, those of you who've been following me for a long time know that I love the philosopher Slavoj Žižek, and he says that all of this obsession with toxic personality disorder can basically be reduced to that, and it's actually a neurotic response to the other, in inverted commas, in air commas, the other, the neighbour, and if you're interested in that as a concept, you should look at Freud did an essay on what Jesus meant when he said, love thy neighbour, and it's this idea that the imposition of another human being, if they get too close to you, just becomes toxic without personality disorder. It just is the imposition of the other, of the neighbour, and therefore it has this kind of intrinsic evil nastiness to it. Okay, back to this dude's question, because it is a good question. I was wondering if you could expand on that in a video. I think I just did. I think if your narcissist looks like they're doing negative things to receive negative supply, you should start being intricate and going, okay, let's, oh, I love a pen. I love a pen and a piece of paper. So in my, this one, that has cookie crumbs on it. It's all part of an intricately designed diet to eat cookies and then get crumbs on my notebook. So if you, in my head, this is how I would see it, and if we're doing like an NLP style exercise, this is literally my internal representation. So I see cluster B at the top, and then I put MPD there, borderline there, histrionic there, ASPD there, okay, N, B, H, A. So that's how it looks inside of my mind when I'm talking to somebody and I'm filtering. And then I start vectoring for where the narcissistic behavior could cross over with histrionic. Say, for example, we have a narcissist whose behavior crosses with a histrionic. This little bit here, in psychology and psychiatry, they call this being comorbid. And one day, 6-8 months ago now, it's hard for me to remember, I woke up and I was like, oh my god, most narcissists are borderline as well, I'm a freaking genius. So I put that into Google, and Sam Vaknin had covered that like years ago, and it's widely known in the psychotherapeutic community that, yeah, narcissists, more often than not, will be comorbid, i.e. presenting with the other vectors of other things. So you'll often get like a narcissist who's not a respecter of the law, who gets caught doing what he shouldn't be doing, and we would say that's antisocial personality disorder. People don't like the term antisocial personality disorder. They go, well, that makes it sound like this brutal sociopathic psychopath who thrives sadistically on the pain of others and causes destruction just to express his own power or her own power is a bit antisocial. That's not a strong enough term. Where it's like, well, but look at it from he's going to say something dismissive. Look at it from the nerd's point of view. The nerds who came up with the techs, the geeks who came up with this model of reality. You know, I work online all the time. And I'm appallingly ignorant about computers, HTML code, XML code, you know, I don't even know the nerd terms to reel them off to you so that I can make a joke out of it. And I have been working online as my full-time job for 8 years now, and I don't understand any of this stuff. And when I'm trying to like build a web page or get a piece of code set in a web page or whatever else, I think, okay, imagine the nerd who wrote this. What was he thinking when he wrote this code? What does he want you to do? What does he expect, or her, expect you to do now in order to make this work? And that's like when people come to me and they go, oh, I can't get, what was the last thing somebody came to me with? Oh, they couldn't get their iTunes song that they opened in Sweden to open on the English store, and they were freaking out, as we all do when we get a technological problem. I managed to fix it. I'm quite good at fixing stuff like that, and I just go, what do the nerds think? So in psychiatry, when they said antisocial personality disorder, it's not an effort at moral relativism. It's not some liberal bullshit thing where, like, when I worked in the probation service, we didn't call criminals criminals, we called them clients because it's more humanizing and fuzzy and warm. It's not that. It's that the nerd has gone, okay, think in terms of like cells at a cellular level, biology. Every time this cluster of cells comes in contact with any other part of the body, any other clusters of cells or organs, it spreads poison. It's this poisonous, every opportunity that the psychopath is presented with to be a dick, they take it, even if it means that they will suffer as a consequence sometimes, which is what separates them from narcissism, as a side point, by the way, boys and girls, even if it brings them down, just because they just have to fuck you up, they just have to. What do we call that? Well, we could call it toxic, we could call it extremely negative personality disorder, we could call it massively exploitative dick-face personality disorder, and they went, no, it's like an antibody, it's perversely toxic to every other cell and every other organ it comes in contact with. We'll call it antisocial, and it sounds too mild, so people are like, no, that's not good enough, but look at it from their point of view, that's why they call it antisocial. So at this end, where you have the psychopath, the modern term for which is antisocial personality, which is a good term if you understand what they mean. In nerd speak, they're saying every social contact, even with pets, will become an opportunity to exploit, to dominate, to be cruel, to be sadistic, etc., etc. That's why that is. The histrionic does crazy shit to garner attention, usually flaunting their sexuality for the sake of it. The borderline bounces around up and down, the damaged sense of self, the emotions that are out of control, extremely manipulative, obsessed with being abandoned, and then the narcissist. I am the coolest. Sorry, I was drawing that off screen, that must have been annoying. So I did this, and it all feeds in. And then every time somebody is describing, like a client describes an ex-partner to me, which is what I do a lot of, I draw this in my mind, and this is what I'm interested in. How is there, are they more borderline? Is it stronger? Is the circle for narcissism larger? Is it stronger? Is it crossing over and feeding back into like a histrionic thing? And so I try and model what it is they're dealing with, because if I can create a model of what they're dealing with, then we know what they're going to do next. On with the question here. Sorry, this video has already gone on too long. Please hold. It's great. My iPhone has dropped the email that I was looking at. Damn your technology! That's the Louis C.K. moment, that. Nobody, we have everything now and nobody's happy, I think that's what he said. Everything's amazing, nobody's happy, that's what he said. I can read emails on this little phone that I carry in my pocket and I get angry with it because it drops the screen for a second. Okay, so the gentleman here asked me, for example, I had a narcissist ex, maybe she was. You sound young, sir. That means I'm presuming that your ex is young. If you're both in the 18 to 21 age, that is another factor for what kinds of problems come up. Borderline and histrionic is way more prevalent. Certainly histrionic is far more diagnosed in young ladies. Borderline is far more diagnosed in young ladies. So that can also be a factor, and there are certain types of borderline that people just actually grow out of, and certain types of histrionic that by the time they get to 28, 29, 30, sexual value is diminishing, the individual starts to mature, maybe they have a child and that changes their worldview, then the personality disorder can work itself out. Sometimes it doesn't. There are 75-year-old histrionics. I've had clients who tell me stories of 75-year-old mothers, their mothers who are their grandmothers, and they'll compete sexually for the sexual attention of men 4 years younger than them. It's crazy, but that's what the field we're dancing in here. For example, I had a narcissist ex that I went no contact on, and she started dating one of my friends. What a nice friend you have! Why is he not in trouble? Why, this email is all about this lady. Why is your mate not in trouble? I think there's a bylaw in the bro code about not doing this. I realise now I may have caused her to do this by ignoring her altogether. he's referring back to the earlier part of the email where he said that she went negative. I don't know exactly what that means in context, but I can guess. But now I feel I must stay the course of no contact because of her negative response. Yeah, you should stay the course of no contact. You also need to ask your mate what he's doing. There's a friend of mine. Oh, he's not. I never see him anymore. I used to do door work with him when I used to do nightclub security in Liverpool, and this guy was like the Scouse Don Juan, and but he had a sort of his own weird code of ethics about it, and his philosophy that I remember to this day stays with me was there are enough birds around to stay away from each other's mothers, sisters, ex-girlfriends and ex-wives. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, preach it, that's wisdom. Your mate doesn't need to see your ex-girlfriend. He can go and see other girls instead. So really, we need to ask him, bro, what do you even bro? And just hand him a copy of the bro code and point and say, this is not like, you know. So you need to question him. Yes, you should stay the course of no contact with her because she's a reaction-seeking tool. You know, I said before that we should have subtlety in our analysis of, you know, personality disorders. Yes, we should, if they need to be analysed. But there does come a point with some clients where I just say to them, look, it doesn't really matter if it's CPTSD that's creating a sort of an obsessive compulsive disorder, personality disorder, where he's obsessed with control and that makes him get freaked out when he's out of control, so he's mean to you and that makes him sadistic. At some point we say, you know what, it actually doesn't matter. The guy is being a tool, the girl is being a tool. There's reaction-seeking behaviour here. Just sack him off. Just get rid of him. This girl, you know, you set a boundary with her for her bad behaviour and you split up with her and then you went no contact with her. She punished you by dating one of your friends. I mean, that tells me lots and lots. You know, actions speak louder than words. The final question that so stick with the no contact, but don't do it because she's a narcissist. She has narcissistic tendencies, but young girls do, young men do. Is she good looking? Yes, probably. And that is a factor for, guess what, they find that narcissists tend to be better looking than non-narcissists. They find that histrionics tend to be better looking than non-histrionic personality types. There is a reason for that, which is that if they've got something that they can exploit, then they will exploit it. She may just be immature. She may just be a bit of a daft girl who doesn't really know what she wants. She's experimenting with the power that her sexuality gives her. I've made the assumption here that you're not a group of 50-year-olds hanging out together, but in my mind you're all around. You're probably younger. I really don't mean to be patronising. I'm trying to fill in the gaps because you've given me an email, but there's stuff I can't see here. And sometimes the stuff a client, you're not my client, but sometimes the stuff a client doesn't tell me is like 1,000 times more valuable and more important than what I am told. So I'm mapping here. I'm assuming you're all younger. She might just be a bit of a dafty. Don't write her off as a narcissist or a borderline or a histrionic. So, well, she's a young girl. She clearly doesn't really know what she wants. But I, as a sovereign adult male who's learning to find his boundaries and his independence in the world, and as somebody who wants to assert his own objectives and his own intent, I choose not to have people like that in my life. My friend, who was weak enough to give in to her sexual advances, I'm also not going to morally condemn him either. But without morally condemning him, I do need to call into question his friendship because he's not really showing me much loyalty here, would be my suggestion, sir. Final question, and it's a doozy. Is it wishful thinking that she will eventually move on and not keep trying new tactics to get me to acknowledge her? Thanks for your vids. Oh, thank you for your email. Is it wishful thinking that she will eventually move on and not keep trying new tactics? It's not wishful thinking, you know, so let's, I can either give you a very crude sort of analysis or a very subtle analysis. So I gave a very crude analysis. She's a reaction-seeking tool, she's a young girl who's just messing around. It doesn't matter, don't make too big a deal out of it. Keep it in context, you're still young, you've got the whole of the rest of your life ahead of you. Take it as a learning experience. If you like girls who are more attractive, come with certain things that you're going to learn as a man growing in the world to deal with and to handle. Fair play to you. Is it reasonable to think that she will move on? So at the more subtle end of the spectrum, because this is a channel where we do talk about personality disorders, we do talk about narcissism and try and make those distinctions, I'll treat it with a degree of subtlety that isn't appropriate for this scenario. Where you have somebody who is a histrionic, a narcissist, or a borderline, will they eventually give up if you keep going no contact? So here's a really good strategy that I found on the internet called the grey stone technique. And I've been meaning to do a video about this for ages. The grey stone technique for dealing with anybody who is a reaction seeker and who is thriving off your reactions. Max, come see me. Let's have a quick little shot of Max because everybody likes Max. Max is a dog, he yawns at you. He's on the downward facing dog. Good yoga. Nice, we like that, Max. It's good work. He's like, why are you talking to yourself? Why? So if you have that reaction seeking sort of personality, regardless of whether there could be a borderline who just can't let you go, it could be the histrionic who lives on your attention, or it could be the narcissist who feels like they're invisible if they're not being acknowledged and praised for their awesomeness, or it could be the psychopath who wants to draw you back into their life to exploit you further. Remember, that's the defining thing with the antisocial personality disorder. Psychopath thing, exploitation, and most of the time they get caught. They're the archetypal criminal who's a loser. If you remember the film Heat, where Robert De Niro, somebody's questioning Robert De Niro about his lifestyle choice because he's a robber, but he's a very, very high level robber. Like, he's really, really good, very technically advanced crew that he runs that takes down only the biggest scores. And he says, do you see me holding up 7-Elevens with a sawn off shotgun with Born to Lose tattooed on my chest? And his point is, I'm not the average criminal. But what he's talking about is the average criminal. The average criminal is not a fucking mastermind. The average criminal is a dope who is not that bright, and they tend to get caught, not because of, like, despite what CSI teaches us, because of amazing shreds of forensic evidence, but they get caught because they screw up. They get caught because they brag about their crimes. Most of them get caught because they are informed on by people who don't like them very much, or because, like, they fall asleep at the crime scene or something with an ice cream in one hand. What am I talking about? Oh yeah, so the grey stone technique. If somebody's being reaction seeking for whatever reason, the grey stone technique is to give them nothing. No oxygen. These personality types, these toxic personality types, they need your reactions like oxygen to breathe. And if there's no emotion there for them to sustain themselves with and to continue the delicious drama, the pain that they're sipping up all of the time by getting reactions from you. Another film reference, actually it's in the book, it's not in the film. Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs, he's talking to the politician, or is she a DA for a certain state, I can't remember, whose daughter is being kidnapped by Buffalo Bill. And he has this thing where he says, I'll give you the information on who Buffalo Bill is, but I want to see that woman's face. Well, in the book, he says to this woman whose daughter's been kidnapped by a serial killer who skins his prey, and so she's in a state of absolute panic, and he looks at her and he says, did you breastfeed your daughter? And she says, yes. And he says, it toughened your nipples, didn't it? And what he's doing as this really malicious, malignant, narcissistic, antisocial personality disorder person who thrives on his power to destroy, and his ability to tear things down, and his ability to cause pain in others, as it describes in the book, how he takes a sip of the woman's pain in her eyes as he's looking at her, as she realizes, this guy's just given me an extremely intimate memory of raising and mothering my own daughter who's now in a state of complete distress, and B, he's not going to help me. But he wanted to look into her eyes as he could tell her, I've got your hopes up, but I ain't going to help you. He needs that. He can't just send her a letter and say, I'm not going to help you, I was only joking, lol, winking, smiley face. You know, he has to actually say it so that he can breathe it in, so he creates this whole setup for it. It's a very interesting scene, and it's accurate, and it's representation of how the truly toxic, malignant personality type thinks. So if you do grey stone is no contact, no reaction, no, don't do that thing. I've done it, loads of my clients have done it, where you try and be reasonable because you're a people pleaser, because you've got the weak and porous ego boundaries. Like, let's be reasonable, let's be adults, come on now, let's talk this through. They send you a shitty email, so you send them an email back that's all measured and adult and you know, justice and balance and calm, and when you said this and I did don't bother, because it's just, you're just feeding the machine, a machine that is sick and that uses pain as fuel. Pain is fuel. Okay, I'm going to finish on that one. Thank you very much for that question. It was very cool and led us into an interesting area. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time and your attention. Please protect yourself at all times, and I will speak to you soon.